Welcome, Tiff the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo, live on a Thursday afternoon. Don, how you doing?
Live and in our satellite studios.
Yes, busy day for me. But you know what? I wanted to talk to you. The NFL Players Association survey has come out, and I literally, honestly, cannot think of a better person to talk to about this than you, the longtime former director of football administration. This is right in your wheelhouse, isn't it, buddy?
Well, the subject matter is the test itself is let's just say unofficial, but it matters.
Was this test around when you were there?
See, the NFLPA puts the test on. They survey all the players. I know that they always surveyed the players. What I don't remember, and we're talking 2017 and prior. Yeah, it would have been 17. It was May of 17, so I would have been there at this time of the year that year. But I don't remember it being made so public. And it's funny because this morning I had on a national news station, non-sports. So yes, I watched non-sports. And on the ticker this morning, the rolling ticker of this national news station, it said NFLPA questionnaire rates the Kansas City Chiefs as the worst workplace.
The worst ownership. Yes.
The dichotomy right there. Huh?
Absolutely. There was something about the Chiefs and some controversy about Clark Hunt not expanding the locker room in time because they had too many home games for the playoffs, which is obviously a problem most teams wouldn't mind having. So before we get into the list itself, maybe you could just give a quick refresher for people. What you did there in this capacity and for how long?
Well, yeah, I mean, I 27 years in total. I had an internship before that, a partial year, a few months there in '89. But my latest role, the one I ended with, was director of football administration from 2005 to 2017. So essentially, I handled the business for the football side of the organization, players, coaches, scouts, trainers, video. They're the talent. They're brought in obviously for special skills and experience, and it was my mission to take as much administratively off of their plates as possible so they could do what they could do to
so the assistant director, the director of football administration, like what would you compare it to, like on the field? Is it like a running back or not the quarterback? Obviously, that's the GM or the head coach. But
sure,
I mean, you obviously had a large role there and an important role, but not the lead role.
Well, I this may be apples and oranges a bit, but it's ironic because I was never in the media. I wasn't looking for it. That was the media department was very careful about trying to put out a unified message, which was impossible with social media. But they tried to have very few people. So it was only after we're doing this podcast, I had a book out and had having some fun after that. But I would say maybe more like the fullback.
Okay, the fullback. I like it.
You don't really notice it unless it goes right and you look at film and like, hey, look at the hole that was created that they was able to run through, or look at that blitz pickup so the quarterback was able to get the ball off. You know what I mean?
I was gonna go offensive guard. If everything goes well, nobody notices or cares.
There you go.
If you miss your assignment and Josh Allen gets blown up 3 seconds into a play, everybody knows it was you.
Well, I'm throwing this back at you right now. As you were on the sideline, and it was your responsibility when you were working in the Wade Phillips staff, that it was up to you to make sure that you, on every special teams play, had 11, not
Correct.
10, not 12 on the field, and the only time you really got called out is if it didn't happen. Otherwise,
well,
and to correct you, screw up, right?
To correct you, I never did get called out because it never did happen under penalty under penalty of football death. But yes, you were in the role. You're in one of those unenviable roles in an NFL organization that everything is going to be perfect. Everything is going to run smoothly, and if anything doesn't run smoothly, then the buck stops with you. Let me before we get into this, we had a user on the Cover One Slack channel ask a really good question. What were your interactions with the NFLPA? Like in your role, or the front office's role? Was the NFLPA seen as an adversary, an ally? Like what was that dynamic?
An adversary.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it was the two instances, the two areas where I worked with them. One was kind of continuous. It was when I was negotiating rookie contracts before they became really standardized. There was more negotiation involved, and you couldn't say slotted, but when we were negotiating contracts, if the league, the player, the agent who ultimately works for the union, had to agree on it. The team had to agree on it. The league had to approve it. But every once in a while, the union, if there was new language in a contract that they feared would be precedent setting, that would hold the player back,
Sure.
future players back, you'd hear from them. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I know the league approved it. Well, it was really up to them to take it up with the league, but we would hear it. And then during the lockout of 2011, I worked with them way too closely because they, subpoenaed all this information, and I was responsible for providing most of it. And I remember they had this really ridiculous deadline. Like, we had to produce it in 72 hours. And we did. We worked long hours. We got it sent to them. And then I remember having to call the union. They were based in Washington, D.C., and asking about, hey, there's some things we sent, and I want to make sure. This is like a month after we sent it. And they're like, I don't know if we have it. Hold on. Oh, yeah, it's in the other room. I see it over there. They hadn't even opened it yet.
Wow.
I was like, wow, okay.
League-wide from people in your position, obviously you can't speak for everybody, but the general consensus was that the NFLPA was like a partner, but also an adversary, like frenemies almost.
Yeah, I guess I was a little too hasty there to just say adversary without any qualification. They were there to protect the players. We were there to in the best interest of the team. The team was paying us. The union didn't pay us a dime. All they did was ask us for things, but the players who we valued were paying union dues to them. And so we were good to them. Like Paul Lancaster, director of player engagement, sometimes a league union rep would come into town, and by all accounts, he could have said, you can meet with the players, but you can't do it here. But there was an agreement where he said, you know what? Sure. Come on in. I'll even call a team meeting. The team meeting room is yours for 90 minutes. I'll get out of there. It'll be just you, just the players. So it was just easier to try to keep that, like what you call frenemy relationship intact, more so than the adversary.
Sure. All right. Thanks to Kellen for that question. I appreciate that. It's something that I did not know. All right, let's get to the list here. Do you think this is an overall positive? Do you think that you're not there any longer, but you were there
that
for
part
quite
is
a
a
long
positive,
time?
you think?
Yeah. Do you think that the list itself is a positive inside the organization?
Well,
just the process of having it be public, I guess.
Not even the results. It's tough. I would say. I mean, accountability is always good at some level, and nobody wants to be embarrassed. And I would say a general manager, at first, when if you get bad grades on a certain area, it's embarrassing. But it is introspective in terms of, hey, what is it that we're not doing? And here's the thing. I mean, the players, many players, as you remember, Josh, like they were on multiple teams, and yes. When they come in, they know what it was like in Chicago or wherever they were. And I remember we had a player from the Bears. That was one of my first years, and we were still paying the players by paycheck. And it was Shane Matthews. He was a quarterback with the Bears. He came over, and he couldn't believe that we didn't have direct deposit yet. Now we were capable of doing direct deposit, but our front office or the Detroit office, where Mr. Wilson was, managed the money to such a degree that they use the time between a player was issued a paycheck and when he cashed it, those 3 days to invest it and get a few days of
cap to cash
interest.
Or cash to cap, right down.
Just cash on that in that instance.
Wow. So they would actually take those 3 days. Wow, that's
or however long it was. Yeah,
sure.
They took an average,
I get it. That tells you quite a bit about where your priorities are.
They built a buffer, yeah, and
sure
hey, they were an office, and then finally, I kept telling Frank Winicki, like, listen, the players are hearing how great direct deposit is. And of course, now it's the norm. And he's like, all right, I'll talk to Jeff. And we had it by the end of that season, I think.
Got it. All right, let's take the list here from the Bills. I'm going to go down each one. Share with me your thoughts, kind of maybe what goes into each of them, maybe a story or an insight from your time there. Treatment of the families. The Bills got a B, sixth best among the 32 teams. It did say that the players feel like the team has taken a slight step backwards this year when it comes to treatment of the families. They suggested more like pregame sideline passes, improved communications, in a more comfortable post-game area. That's a tough one. I can speak to that one a little bit too. The players always want more, right? Whether it's tickets, whether it's all the perks and all the things that are not covered by the salary cap, that a player will always come to you and want more. Mm-hmm. What did you feel, when you were there, and even hearing that now, 6 out of 32 is clearly great. But what did you feel about that aspect of helping to run an organization?
Well, yeah, I mean, from the player standpoint, the reason they would want that, what do they say? Happy wife, happy life.
There you go.
And they put so much of their lives into football that they want, their families to be able to partake. There were a lot of it was a different head coach. Like some head coaches, like Dick Duran, I remember, he was more than happy to open up the Saturday walkthrough, which is,
family time.
It was for him. And then other coaches, Doug Marrone, said absolutely not anyone who's not part of this organization will darken those doors. And it was fun. The practice was such a light practice. It didn't really reveal much, but afterwards, the kids would get out there and try to kick the ball through the uprights and play, and they would meet it was a good opportunity to meet the families from other teams. So for us, and unfortunately, when I was there, we had way too many head coaches. So I can speak to this one did it this way, this one did it that way. I was only with Sean McDermott for a few months, but I have to believe that it would be something very important to him and a testament to him that they scored that high.
So that's interesting. So it was a lot. That one specifically was set by the head coach, probably more so than some of the other ones that might be set by general manager or budget or owner, etc. That the atmosphere around the players and the players' family isn't necessarily a monetary issue. It's more like a cultural issue, right?
That's a great way to put it. Actually, yeah, cultural. Yeah, and they all the coaches say the right things, but only some really back it up. And a lot of times, this probably applies to a lot of categories too, but team captains carry a lot of weight in terms of what they're hearing from guys. And, Eric Wood was one, and, they'll go to the head coach and say, hey, can we do this or that? And that's how a lot of those things are brought.
Winning helps too, right? Because the worst thing is when the families are around and you lost, or the atmosphere is kind of toxic or not a positive. That kind of sucks.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you have this information in front of you, but where do the Chiefs rank for
that? I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, you're right. Treatment of families is great when you're, flying, for the Super Bowl and hosting the AFC Championship game every year. All right. Next one on the list. I can attest to this one as well from my time there. Food and cafeteria. The Bills got a C, 23rd out of 32 in the league. They said determined areas of improvement are both taste of the food served and its freshness. So that's, I think people might not realize just how much food the players, the coaches, and the staff get during the season in any NFL franchise. Do you remember what the budget was for non-game day food or kind of talk me through all of the catering and all of the stuff that happens during the week?
Yeah, it was during just eating during the week, players and staff, it was $25 a plate. But the food, the thing about the food is that, I can attest to the freshness. Now, the taste, to some degree, is determined by the strength and conditioning coach, if he also happens to be the team nutritionist. Because at the beginning of the week, kind of recovery mode, Monday after a game, they're allowed quite a bit of, fat and carbs in their food. But as the week goes on, that there's less and less of that. And it's more and more just protein and vegetables. and there's only so much you can do.
Sure.
Oh, awesome. Hey, look what happened in our satellite studio here.
We are live. So right. The obviously these guys are on some sort of a not a diet, but they're on a meal program. I could say when I was there was plenty of choices, but it wasn't, like you were walking into a cruise buffet with macaroni and cheese and all of the, heavier sides, etc. It was healthy eating. It was healthy eating, obviously, for a purpose. What I was struck by is that, as part of the staff, that was really one of the perks that, during the season, I never had to pay for a meal.
Because they would prefer that you stuck around because, you only got, a few minutes and you're right back in the grind, right?
Right. Well, you have to have 15 hours a day to work in the NFL. That's a law. Speaking of nutritionist, dietitian, this is one of the ones where the Bills, created some headlines and some news. D plus 29th. Only 54% of the players felt like they got an individualized plan from the team. That's interesting, right? Because they have, when you were there, when you left, what was the situation? Did they have a full-time nutritionist as well as like the strength and conditioning guys?
Yep. We got a little glitch here.
Did they have the full-time nutritionist dietitian when you were there? Oh boy, I think Don froze on us here. That is not ideal. Don, you still with us? The hazards of going live. I will share my story about when I got promoted from the marketing department over to the football department. I'd struggled with weight for quite a bit of my life, and at that point in time, one of my conditions from being promoted from the marketing department to the football department was to, frankly, just to get in shape. So I got promoted. I was thrilled. Opportunity of a lifetime. I'm 23 years old, but I was really heavy. I was over 275 pounds at the time. So I got sent down to Rusty Jones, and world famous, should probably be in the Hall of Fame, Rusty Jones, strength and conditioning coach of the Bills at the time. And he basically put me on a crash course diet and a crash course nutrition program, including a trip to the Bod Pod, which is one of the more. That's all right. I'm telling the story about how I visited with Rusty Jones and Rich Gray and the rest of the strength and conditioning guys when one of the conditions for me being promoted was to lose some weight. And he stuck me in the Bod Pod, which was a humiliating experience. And he gave me an individualized nutrition program that helped me drop 75 pounds in 4 months. What, near the end of your tenure, was there a dietitian, nutritionist, as well as the strength and conditioning guys, or is it all kind of lumped into one?
For me, it was always the head strength and conditioning coach. He might have delegated someone. They all had some level of expertise in that area. In a little bit of time I missed, did you mention Woody calling you out with the pants or no?
No, I did not. No, that okay. There was a lot of motivation in that locker room. Some of it was positive, some of it wasn't so positive from people who gave me their thoughts about how quickly I needed to lose weight and what I needed to eat and not eat. We had about 50 dietitians on the staff when I was publicly trying to lose all this weight. It was great.
It was amazing. I remember.
It was great. It was amazing. Yeah. But Rusty helped change my life, which is a credit to him. But
Rusty recently retired also. Congratulations to him. We should try to get him on the program.
Did they nutritionist, dietitian, it's not necessarily separated from the strength and conditioning guys?
It wasn't when I was there. So I know other clubs though had their own dietitian. And you mentioned the players felt like there was a lack of individualized menus. Well, they did it more grouped by position. As you know, every position, there are examples outside the variance, but they, an offensive lineman tends to be in the range of, 290 to 320 or whatever. So they have the same. They have to build and sustain. It's always amazing to see when an offensive lineman retires and their caloric intake drops dramatically, and they just shed the weight in a way that you can't believe they're the same person. But so I know that they were very in tune to having certain position groups eat the same way, but I don't know how far they drilled down individually, really.
Right. All right, next one on the list, the training room, a place that you always talk about fondly from your time there.
Yeah.
Clearly has changed quite a bit from your intern days in the late 80s until today, where there's an army of people and
Yeah.
cold tubs and warm tubs. And could you imagine the players of today having to walk into the training room in 1989?
Oh, brutal. Yeah. No, it would be. It would feel like I wouldn't go so far as to say high school, maybe a Texas high school,
Sure,
but
right.
right. Yeah.
So they got the Bills. The Bills it got a B plus. They ranked 8. And a couple interesting things here: 79% of the players thought that they had enough full-time physical therapists. They ranked the Bills 98% and 97%
Mm,
for hot and cold tub space and the space of the training room, etc. So they were
mhm.
really happy with like the physical space, but felt like they could maybe have a little bit more staff. Do you remember like how many people worked in the training room during the week, not game days?
Trainers, there were 4 or 5. There was a head trainer plus 4. One of those 4 was in my later years, Chris Fischetti was a certified um, therapist. Then they would bring in a chiropractor during the week from the outside, 2 days a week. It was expensive, and workers' comp would not cover it. And I kept getting called out for that when budget time came through. But our head trainer insisted that the guys really needed it for, their vertebrae. He would throw all this medical stuff at me, and I mean, how can I argue it, right?
Sure.
But the players loved it, and so yeah, the Chris Fischetti, left the year after I was there. I don't know what they have now. Apparently, the players feel like they need more in that area, but yeah, it was. Uh, I don't know how much it varies from team to team, but there's a lot more to their physical health than just orthopedic, swelling reduction, which is what the cold tub does. In speeding, it benefits the team when you can speed up a player's
Of
rehab, and
course.
apparently, therapy is a big part of that.
These are all
It's an intangible.
I find it interesting that, not that the Bills or anyone else were pinching pennies, but man, getting a chiropractor in there 2 days a week in the grand scheme of the NFL, if the players like it, even if it was just like a placebo, it just seems to me that man, you're splitting hairs here, right? Like
Well,
the best chiropractor on earth, Don, is how much an hour? Like I guess it
uh,
just five
it
hundred
was
dollars an
like
hour.
it was in the hundreds, and it just everyone partook. And
Sure.
when it got tricky is when all of a sudden you'd see staff names on the bill, and you're like, no, no, no.
Okay,
I'm
well,
sorry.
sure, that's a different story. Now
You know what I mean? That's
I
not. It's
can,
not
I
for
can,
you.
I can hear that.
But it was kind of an expense we couldn't count on every year. I would, are we going to do that again? Well, I'd like to, and
Sure.
then they did, and it was, a couple. I mean, maybe 150,000. You're right in the context of everything else, but when he
Yeah, it's
when it's real
150,000
money,
here, 200,000 there. Sure, I get
yeah,
it. Next
yep,
one here, the weight room, A plus, second in the league. I don't know how you're only second with an A plus. I don't know what's higher than an A plus.
yeah.
The $40 million that the team invested in the state of the art weight room. Were you there when it was built, or they were talking about it, or budgeting it? What was
Most
your
of it,
status with it?
most of
Okay,
it, and there was still after I was there. Apparently, there was another extension that went on it, but I haven't seen it from the inside. But I can tell you that it was spectacular. I mean, the tons of room. The offices for the strength coaches were excellent, and
do you think there's any
yeah,
benefit? The Bills are pretty unique in the league where their headquarters, the training facility, the practice facility, and the stadium are all in one campus. And
right.
obviously they're going to stay, there with the stadium being built on the other side of Abbott Road. Most teams don't train where the stadium is, right? Do you think that's any advantage that everything is
Right.
all in one campus?
Um, yeah, absolutely is. I mean, you definitely, just trying to keep the players where they are is big. We got this road problems here. So, yeah, I mean, players they like the camaraderie. Especially in Buffalo weather and driving conditions. The less driving that's necessary, the less risk. You know,
Sure.
As you know, you just
Yes,
want
of
to,
course.
when they're there, you want to keep them there. Try to have an all, one-stop shop as best as you can. And I think the Bills facility does a great job with that.
$40 million for the weight room is a significant investment, and that's
Yeah.
it shows when you're there, and it's pretty amazing to me that that's stands out in the NFL. It's another thing where it just feels like to me that they're printing money, and any advantage or any way that you can invest in your talent
Yeah.
is where you can get a competitive advantage. Next one on
Well,
the
we
list.
talked about free agency before. That's coming
Yeah,
up.
bring him in
end of the
there.
month,
That's
and
what a selling point.
exactly. Yeah, that's you'll want them to see those things. Yeah, and as it's a place they know that they'll be spending time. That they have to spend time. It's required that they spend time there. So might as well be as great a place as they can make it.
Next one on the list, kind of similar vein, the locker room, B plus. They ranked 8. Every player said that the locker room is big enough. No team reached 100%, and only a couple reached 90%. So I think every player would love something, another bell or whistle in an NFL locker room. But were you in the new locker room? Do you remember
Yeah.
them, designing and building that? Did anything was there anything specific that you remember about the design of it or that stood out to you?
Well, it was, first of all, it's huge. The lockers were almost like walk-in closets,
Okay.
with a stool in front of them. But I remember the timing of it was whatever year they were trying to finish it up, and it might have been 2000. I don't know, 14, 13. But it was around there. I remember Mario Williams was there for some reason, because I remember his reaction when they were trying to have it finished um, by the time camp broke at St. John Fisher. So when the team came back for the rest of the preseason, it would be a full go. The offseason workout, the locker room they used actually is they kind of brought the old locker room back from the old building that you remember.
Yep.
For the offseason workouts and mini camp. It was not convenient. It looked, but it was worth the wait. I remember when the players came back from camp, I was there, and they just started running around like little kids, like, "Oh my gosh!"
Any idea
like
how much that
Christmas
cost?
morning. I don't know exactly what that cost because it was part of a capital expenditure expense program. But a name that we talked about on the program, Scott Radisek, the former Bills linebacker, backup linebacker, was a guy that was a lead for that company that designed it. And it would be interesting to try to get him on our program someday to talk more about
Absolutely.
the surveys that he did. Because I know that they did a lot of surveys around the league to try to put together a best of situation.
Who pays for that? The capital improvements on the weight room, the field house, etc. Is that the Bills out of pocket? Is it the county, the state? Is it a combination? Do you remember?
It's there's a three-headed monster there. It's the team and the county, the state. It's more of a two-headed monster than that, but it's usually some combination of that. Sometimes I don't know how they negotiate it, but sometimes it's just a team expense. I guess if the county doesn't want to put in for it, if the team makes the case to the county that it's worth their, they can't really play the "or else we'll leave" card anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a combination usually.
And some people might not be aware if you're not, you're listening to this from outside of Buffalo, or maybe if you're in Buffalo, they don't use the stadium locker room every day. Can you talk to people about a typical practice day? Let's say a game day or a game week Wednesday. What the infrastructure of the building and where everybody is during that day, because the stadium really isn't used at all.
No, they kind of dust off the stadium every home game the night before. When we had Woody Rubicon, assistant equipment manager at the time, all of the equipment on say it's a Sunday game, on Saturday after the walkthrough is put on trucks and driven over to the stadium and go right to the tunnel and unloaded, and then they try to replicate the locker room as best they can, like the one during the week, so that players come in on Sunday, they go in the locker room, and it's as if the whole room was moved over. It's a smaller version.
Yeah, how much bigger is the footprint of the the weekday locker room to the stadium locker room?
It's at least 1.5 times bigger. Yeah, I wouldn't go so far to say it's double, but at least 1.5 times bigger than the stadium locker room.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something that I became aware of only when I got there. I guess in my youth and my naivete, I assumed that they practiced in the stadium quite a bit more. The only time I ever went in the stadium was when we did like specialist drills on Fridays. Like Chris Moore and Steve Christie would want to go punt and do field goals in the stadium. And
with the wind,
I had the unenviable task of trying to catch Chris Moore's punts in the stadium, and he would try to punt them higher than the last row of the upper deck, so the wind would catch them. And yeah, that was not my most athletic moments in those times. That was brutal trying to catch punts on a windy day in the stadium.
Can you even imagine like what that is like in front of 80,000? Put yourself in that position.
Nope.
It's coming, it's windy, and oh, by the way, there are 11 guys charging at you as hard as possible that are trying to time it, that they're there right when you catch it, and then, oh, by the way, you're supposed to catch it and then try to advance the ball.
It gave me such an appreciation for people who catch punts. It's amazing. It's an amazing skill on its own. On a Friday, it's difficult. On a Friday afternoon with nobody there, it's difficult. Let alone Sunday game day. It's yeah. I'm glad there's no footage of that. I'm glad nobody was around, because I think I got to the point where I caught about half of them. That was probably about the limit. Good. But yeah, so it's just very interesting that they literally pick up and move across the parking lot from a walkthrough Saturday to a game day Sunday, and then you go back. After the game is over, the stadium, like you said, is it's not used for another week, 2-3 weeks during the season.
That's right. Yeah, Monday morning they're back in their familiar, administrative office locker room, and
All right, Don, we're going to get to the meat of the thing here. We're 32 minutes in. The one we need to talk about, team travel. They got a D, Don, a D. Now, all right, let's start here. If this survey existed publicly in 2015 and the Bills got a D, what would have happened to Don Purdy, former director of football administration at One Bills Drive?
Yeah, I'd have already had a phone call right now to go down to the GM's office and just say what's going on. And it never happened. I don't know what.
Well, I've got some of the complaints here. I have some of the complaints here.
I'd love to hear them.
And you and I are going to have we're going to have it out about one topic we vehemently disagree with. I don't know if you remember or not. It said only 45% of the players feel like they have a comfortable amount of personal space during flights, and that ranked dead last of the 32 teams. They're also frustrated by the seating on the team plane. Staff members get priority over the players, who are mostly assigned to smaller economy seats where many of the bigger players don't comfortably fit.
Really?
That's correct. Tom, that's correct. I was shocked when I was there the first time I went on the charter. Coaches were in first class and the players were in the back. And I thought to myself, that was crazy.
Well, here's what we did for a couple regimes. There were only 18 first class seats, I think, 18 or so I remember Rex Ryan said the players are going to sit in first class, but all they could really do would be based on seniority.
Sure.
League seniority, not team seniority. So it'd be the highest, the players on defense with eight most years, or the 8 players with the most seniority on offense, defense, and special teams, and they would sit in those seats.
Well,
coaches were in
that's
coach.
Better. That's better. I was struck that the coaches and that the GM and the owners were in first class. I always thought that was odd. The other thing, now you as the director of football administration, I mean, you weren't making those decisions on the seating chart. You wouldn't be the one in charge of the actual physical plane. Were there choices of a plane? Like, is there a bigger plane than what they're using? Like, do you get that choice?
There's for trips 2 hours or longer. It was a 767, which was two aisle, uh, two aisle, three aisle two, and
Sure.
every player had an open seat next to them. So every player, if they were sitting by a window, the seat next to them was open. And then if they were sitting in the middle seat was open. No player ever, when I was there, had to sit next to another player. They always had a seat open. Now,
Okay, but
staff had to sit next to other players.
You're Spencer Brown.
Other,
You're Spencer Brown. You're 6'8", 300 and whatever. You're telling me that he gets a regular coach seat, and yes, nobody's next to him.
Right.
Man, does the seatbelt even fit? Like, it seems like to me that it's kind of it seems like an antiquated thing where, I know that the team doesn't travel that many times a year, but boy, like with the amount of money that you're making in the NFL, it feels like to me there could be some sort of custom plane, or I know some, teams in other sports own their own plane. It just seems like a 2-3-2 for an NFL football team. Just seems kind of crazy to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was that was the biggest. It was a charter plane, obviously. Like I say, we didn't own the plane, but we had rights to, we reserved it. And I can honestly, I never saw a player. I'm thinking of a Langston Walker, a 6'8", 6'9" guy. Even then, when I walked up and down the plane, he did just have enough leg room to where he wasn't like eating his knees. It didn't hit the seat in front of him, but he could also kind of turn to the side. It was 45%. It was the staff that was next to me. So I don't know if they're doing anything differently.
Well, or just guys just keep getting bigger, and quite frankly, plane seats and the space in between seats and rows just keeps getting smaller on every plane.
That's true. That's interesting too.
That's not the Bills' fault, but if you notice, only 45% of players feel like they have comfortable amount of personal space. If you break down a roster of NFL football players, like O-line, D-line, and tight ends and linebackers is probably about 45% of the roster. So the bigger guys,
that's true.
And you're dead last in that. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I don't know what the situation is now. I don't know if you do or not, but do you think the younger guys still have roommates on the road?
I don't know. For when I was there, it was 4 years or less. They had a roommate. If they had 5 years of credited seasons or less, they had their own, or more, they had their own room.
Terrible. Did anyone ever say this is ridiculous? Did any of the head coaches that came through? I can't imagine like Rex Ryan or no. They this is the NFL.
It's not a standard.
It's not summer camp.
I never had a head coach. Never had a head coach say, "Hey, we did it this way, so we're going to do it this way now." Like it was not different than with any other team. The only thing different was with Rex, and I think maybe one other coach with the first class seating. But
so picture this: it's Josh Allen's third year. They're going to Kansas City for the infamous 13 seconds game. He'd have a roommate. Let's say the guy has like diarrhea, or he's feeling sick the night before, and he's up all night long. And your franchise quarterback, who you're paying $250 million for, has to endure the randomness of a roommate. I don't know, man. I think that is.
Yeah, it's a head coach. It's a head coach. The ultimate decision rests with them. So,
I would make sure that all of my players had their own space to sleep the night before a game. I think, and again, it wasn't your decision, so I'm just kind of giving you a hard time here. But when you told me that still was going on, because the team basically rents out one or two entire floors of a hotel, right?
Yeah. Sometimes three, depending on
the cost savings.
What the wing is.
The cost savings of those 40 rooms, 8, 9, 10 times a year to me. That's just a head scratcher. That's one bad signing bonus to like a 4th round pick.
Well, yeah, it's the rooms were. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously several $1 million, each year.
And now here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, buddy. Tell me who your roommate was on the road as the former director of football administration.
Didn't have one. No.
So you had your own room.
I did.
Josh Allen
I did.
Did not.
Well, we weren't there at the same time.
Okay, all right.
But still, if the quarterback had
JP
Losman, 4 years or less,
EJ Manuel,
Yes.
So you
Yes.
enjoyed the comforts of your own quiet hotel room the night before a game, but
Yeah.
the starting quarterback of an NFL team some of the time did not.
That is true.
That's
That is true.
whacked. That's whacked, buddy. I'm sorry. That's one I will never understand. And
Yeah.
again, not
Yeah.
your call, but I guess I'm if I was in your position, did you ever feel like there was something that you disagreed with, whether it was that or something else? Did you ever really strongly advocate for something maybe on this list that you thought, hey, this isn't great?
There were things that I would, if I would hear about it, or again, if I were, I was close with Paul Lancaster, director of player engagement, if players brought concerns to him, if it had to do with cost, I would always bring it up in a budget meeting, and and just have it be considered. And most of the time they listen, but I was not going to advocate to change a policy that sounded like it was league wide.
Sure, of course. Did you ever get feedback from players about these things? Were you kind of known like if before this survey, existed, or if this survey did exist when you were there, would you have been the guy that, people would have gone to with complaints?
Yeah, I was in the front lines. Yeah, I was right there. I was the first guy at the airport. The only time I really got heard it was Scott Chandler was a tight end. And as of that, I sent in the seating chart, the final version on Friday afternoon before we traveled. And I was told Scott Chandler was injured and was not traveling. And then on Saturday morning, apparently, miraculously, he shows up at the airport because he was cleared by the trainers to play. And I didn't have a seat for him because they all have. So I had to scramble and bump this guy. Hey, sorry, you're gonna sit over here. Bumps, and it was like domino effect. And it was just Scott Chandler was a big guy. He was like a 6'8" tight end. So we were going someplace far too. It was like Oakland
Well, thank God you didn't have to give up your solo room on the road.
No.
Thankfully, you didn't have to double up and suffer that indignity that the starting quarterback might.
Exactly.
So, couple more on this list as we wrap it up here. The head coach, he got an A. You wonder how anonymous these things are, because I would hope that most teams would give their head coach a positive grade. It said, Sean McDermott said he's efficient with their time. And very willing to listen to the locker room. The parade of coaches that we've had, a good time talking with over the years. Did you feel like a lot of them were at least willing to listen to the players, concerns, complaints, or, front office guys like you? Were the majority of them at least willing to listen, even if they didn't, change the way they did things?
A majority were, not all, but a majority were. And
I can guess the couple that might come to the top
yeah.
of your mind that weren't.
Yeah. And I would say that from what I gathered and heard and witnessed was that those coaches that weren't, they relied more on the captains. Like, look, we're not a stone wall here, but we don't want a free for all either of every player coming to us all the time with their concerns. If you're willing to be a captain, then you hear them out and you advocate on their behalf at a time of our choosing or something like that. Yeah.
And it's funny when you hear about them saying that he's efficient with their time. One thing that struck me when I got promoted and I was in, meetings and such is during the week, it almost feels like you're at like a high school or a college campus, right? Like the guys are going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and it's much more like a school almost, right? Like you're literally in rooms with chairs and desks and a screen, and so much of it is mental until practice time. But you're crossing people in the hallways, and there's set meeting times, and also it almost had that like high school. Yeah, it almost felt most of them carried backpacks, like almost like a high school vibe.
Yeah, they have backpacks. Big difference is if you're late, you're fined. But you're right. It's still like going through hallways, passing each other. And look what I got to get there. And when the meeting's out, you go to the next room and maybe then practice, which is like gym class.
Yeah, it had that vibe. Last one on the list here, ownership. Got an A-. Terry Pegula received a 9.1 out of 10 when considering his willingness to invest in the facilities. That was ranked 8th among all owners. What did you notice the change? You said you were in budget meetings and there was always kind of running up against a wall. how big was the change, after Mr. Wilson passed away to the Pagulas? Very clearly Mr. Wilson watched over every penny much more so than the Pagulas did. Was it night and day?
No, what they did was they put their own people as the kind of committee that you presented to. They juggle a lot of things around, and the meeting room, you still went in and presented, but there was some different positions. There were people. We ended up doing it. I can honestly say I felt like there was a higher level of scrutiny under the Pagulas in terms of how much of our budgets were read. It felt like almost when Mr. Wilson and his people were there, they reviewed the budgets, but they put more stock in the meeting, and they put the onus on the person to make a case for it, and projections and things like that. Where when the Pagulas came in, the meetings didn't feel as intense, but you found out later, wait a minute, they're questioning this, they're questioning that, they're reading the reports more, and then you when we were done with under Mr. Wilson, you felt like that's over until next year, and a couple months. Here it's like, well, wait a minute, a budget we turned in 3 months ago, it's getting questioned now, which it was just a different style.
When did these typically take place? Like what time of the year?
Early March. I always
so right about now.
It's funny because I always remember it was around the NCAA tournament, which
middle of March. Did you ever find yourself advocating for something either pro or con that you thought was ridiculous?
Well, I think when I got probably with the trainers, I did their budgets, and I did the strength and conditioning budgets, and the frustrating thing for me was the strength and conditioning coach would submit their budget, and all the machines were, $30,000 each. And then they would go to the show, some like in Vegas every year or something, and they would see the latest and greatest and hear that every team's doing it. And they would come back and like, oh my gosh, we have to have 6 of these. And like, all right, I understand you went to the show after the budgets, but okay, I'll submit it for you, but be prepared that it might get shot down just because it was unfortunate timing for them. But yeah, that's I more managed the budgets than advocated for things, and I would stick up for people if someone was questioning, whether or not something was really needed. I would say, look, this guy, he's not frivolous, or lady. They've demonstrated that to me for whatever it's worth. Sometimes they would have someone come in and he wants this, 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 and they would look at me and I'd be like, hey, and that was enough for them to say, all right, maybe just this guy isn't.
All right, two more questions here. Do you remember ever telling someone, hey man, this is not gonna work, this is not gonna happen? Like, did you ever basically veto something before you would even present it?
Yeah, I if I knew it was a big ticket item, especially if it was coming in late, I would kind of tip off the decision makers to what was coming down the pike.
Okay.
And just to get them kind of ready. Better it happened then than just during the meeting and someone get blindsided.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. You still with us here, buddy? Okay. And last one here.
I'm with you. Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Is there something that constantly shocked you at how expensive it was?
Both training equipment, which apparently they're buying, it seems almost they're at the checkout line of Walmart. I throw in a couple of those, impulse buys. But
oh, I think we lost you. I think we lost Don there. We're gonna wrap it up here then. I know that Don used to tell me that video equipment.
Oh, there we
It's
go.
always shocking.
Very, very expensive.
Don,
shocking.
the video equipment.
Yes. Yeah. The video, equipment
yep.
was, I couldn't believe it. And they always claim how it changed all the time. I was like, okay, but yeah, that was huge.
Well, hopefully the NFL grows to the point where every player has their own room on the road. I think that's a goal for the next CBA and the next, because it's the Amazon money and everything else coming in. Hopefully, we're gonna find that out, whether every team, if any other teams still have that. Anything else before we wrap it up, Don?
No, I think the Bills fared well, and I would just say again, we started off the program by being very surprised to see where the Chiefs ranked, and when
and ownership, it was the ownership, yep,
yeah, and everything that comes from that. And I guess we always had thought that everything you do can help, and so that I was just surprised to see that. But hey, I probably won't change anything.
The lesson there is number 15 covers up a lot of mistakes for the Chiefs, right? It's 15 and 87.
Wow, there you go. Yeah,
we're thank you for everybody for listening. Please like and subscribe to both our show and the Cover One Network. Saturday morning, we have a really fun and interesting interview that we're going to release with Brian Polian, who's now the AD at John Carroll University. He was here this week recruiting for his school. He's got an amazing football journey of his own, and obviously Buffalo ties with his dad being the GM here and him growing up around the team. So hopefully everybody checks that out. It's a really interesting interview.
It is. Yeah, he had a handful of real behind the scenes stories about his father, and I loved it.
Good stuff. All right, we'll see everybody soon. Thanks.
All right.